Stepping in on short notice can define or destroy a fighter's night. Mateusz Gamrot accepted a main event with Charles Oliveira, with minimal time to prepare. He's a warrior, but this fight exposed the brutal cost of taking a fight too late. This is the story behind the loss and the storm afterward. Late summer 2025, Rafael Fiziev was scheduled to headline UFC Rio versus Charles Oliveira, but injury struck. Fiziev withdrew. The UFC scrambled. They needed a credible replacement who could fill the main event slot. Enter Mateusz Gamrot. Known for his wrestling, heart, and versatility, he accepted the call. But accepting late means walking into the unknown. Flip the tape. Gamrot is a former KSW champion, but for much of his UFC career, he's been climbing, beating Jalen Turner, Rafael dos Anjos, and Ludovic Klein, his most recent win. Still, he had never headlined for a former champion. This was the biggest fight of his life, not because of the opponent, but because of the conditions. And here's the sucker punch. He had mere weeks, not months, to prepare, strategize, and adapt to Brazil, altitude, and Carvalho's submission threats. Many asked, was he stepping in as a hero or walking into a trap? Before this fight, Gamrot's career had been defined by grit. He's wrestled, brawled, mixed styles. His losses have usually come by decision, control, not finishes. He became known for heart, durability, and fight IQ. But every fighter has a ceiling. Oliveira, conversely, is a submission legend. Rear naked chokes, back attacks, scrambles. He's finished more opponents than almost anyone in UFC history. And he was fighting at home in Brazil, with crowd energy, familiarity, and momentum. For Gamrot, the upside was huge. Beat a legend, vault rankings, silence critics of durability. But the downside, facing Oliveira's grappling with limited prep is a gamble. You walk in knowing you might be overwhelmed. Yet he walked in anyway, because opportunities like this don't come often. Let's map the timeline. Rafael Fiziev withdrew late. Gamrot was approached. He agreed. That gives him around 2 weeks or slightly more to shift his camp. No custom game plan against Oliveira's transitions. No long sparring cycle. No deep dive into opponent tape with full freshness. That short window also compresses logistics. Travel, acclimatization, diet, scalar cuts, mental prep. The corner must move faster than ever. Coaches must simplify strategy. Every mistake or underprepared segment gets magnified. Gamrot's corner later acknowledged it was a gamble. We wished for more prep, said his coach. But fighters often feel they have no choice. Declining costs them respect, momentum, and any shot at a big payday. So they step in, even when all the stars and odds are misaligned. 2 weeks. That's how long Mateusz Gamrot had to morph from an off-camp athlete into a man ready to face one of the most dangerous finishers in MMA history. Fighters at his level usually plan 8 to 10 week camps, periodized strength cycles, specific drills, nutrition control, altitude adaptation. Gamrot had none of it. The call from the UFC came out of nowhere. Rafael Fiziev was injured, and the promotion needed someone to save the Rio card. Gamrot, known for never saying no, accepted instantly. But heroism has a price. He had been out of fight shape. Still training, yes, but not cutting weight, not peaking. His walk-around weight hovered above lightweight limits. That meant a massive accelerated cut. Nutritionists scrambled to design a 2-week crash plan. Low-sodium meals, dehydration protocols, sweat sessions twice a day. The toll was brutal. Photos from Fight Week showed a gaunt version of Gamrot, cheeks hollowed, eyes distant. Energy becomes currency in those final days, and he was already overspent. Tactically, it was worse. Oliveira's game is chaos, explosive entries, submission chains, knees in the clinch. Preparing for him requires months of scenario drilling. Gamrot's team at American Top Team barely had time for a handful of grappling simulations. They went in knowing they were underprepared. But in the world's biggest cage, sometimes heart has to substitute for preparation. He wasn't fighting Oliveira yet, he was fighting time and losing. January 2025, Rio de Janeiro. The crowd roared in yellow and green as Charles Oliveira walked out to Song of the Champion. Across the octagon stood Gamrot, stoic but pale, every ounce of exhaustion disguised behind composure. The bell rang, and reality hit immediately. Oliveira pressed forward like a storm. His pressure pinned Gamrot to the fence, forcing early grappling exchanges. For a wrestler, that should have been comfort territory, but Oliveira's timing was sharper. He shifted from Muay Thai elbows into slick guard pulls, threatening triangles and arm bars. Gamrot defended, but every scramble burned oxygen. 2 weeks of preparation couldn't simulate the Brazilian's pace. Mid-round, a knee grazed Gamrot's chin. He shot desperately for a takedown, but Oliveira sprawled, grabbed a front headlock, and transitioned. The crowd crowd sensed it, the signature trap. Moments later, Oliveira snaked his arms around the neck, adjusting until the squeeze locked in. Gamrot tried to spin, but the grip only tightened. Seconds later, he tapped. Round 1, submission. Another victim added to Oliveira's record books. The arena erupted while Gamrot knelt, shaking his head, not from pain but frustration. He'd risked everything, his ranking, his pride, for a fight he never truly had time to prepare for. As the referee lifted Oliveira's hand, cameras caught Gamrot's corner applauding. They knew what few fans did, that he'd stepped in to keep an event alive, sacrificing his own odds for the sport's continuity. But online, context rarely survives. The internet doesn't see fatigue or courage. It only sees defeat. Within hours, the tone online shifted from sympathy to scorn. Headlines read, "Oliveira destroys late-notice opponent." Comment sections were crueler. Some accused Gamrot of being overrated, of talking big and folding fast. The reality that he'd accepted a main event fight on barely 2 weeks' notice, cut over 20 pounds, and faced the most lethal submission artist alive, barely surfaced in conversation. Critics pointed to his cautious offense, to how quickly Oliveira found the finish. They forgot that fatigue blurs reflexes, that dehydration dulls reaction time. Analysts who looked deeper noted that Gamrot's usual explosiveness was missing. His takedowns lacked drive, his top pressure absent. His coach later admitted, "We knew we weren't at 100%, but when the UFC calls, you answer." Still, not all feedback was venom. Fighters rallied behind him. Justin Gaethje, Beneil Dariush, even Islam Makhachev, praising his courage to take a fight others turned down. They knew what it meant to step in short notice against a stylistic nightmare. Gamrot himself remained silent for days. When he finally spoke, it wasn't excuses. It was ownership. "I lost," he wrote, "but I fought." He thanked Oliveira, the UFC, and fans, vowing to rebuild the right way, with a full camp next time. Behind the humility, though, was exhaustion. The weight cut, the media backlash, the self-blame, all of it took a toll. But every fighter faces that crossroad, retreat or rise. For Gamrot, the story wasn't over. It was just paused. After the loss in Rio, the MMA world moved on fast, the way it always does. But for Mateusz Gamrot, the noise lingered. Social media was split between trolls mocking him and fans defending his bravery. Polish outlets ran think pieces about his disastrous night. Brazilian media called it vintage Oliveira. Gamrot, meanwhile, disappeared. No interviews, no training clips, just silence. Behind that silence was a process only fighters understand. The post-fight come-down, that hollow ache where adrenaline fades and reflection begins. The weight cut had wrecked his body. His metabolism was shot, his sleep broken, his confidence shaky. Doctors told him to rest. His mind told him to get back to work. It was around that time that his coaches at American top teams spoke publicly for the first time. They confirmed what fans suspected. Gamrot had 2.5 weeks of notice, minimal prep, and had been training for a different stylistic opponent before the offer came. They admitted it wasn't ideal, but they also said something that mattered. Most fighters would have said no. Mateusz said yes. That truth reframed the narrative. The backlash began to fade as fans realized the risk he took. Taking a short-notice fight isn't weakness, it's sacrifice. He didn't lose to lack of courage. He lost to lack of time. And in that, there's a strange kind of victory. Because even in defeat, he proved what it means to be a fighter. Someone who shows up when others won't. Every career has defining losses. For Charles Oliveira, it was Paul Felder. For Kamaru Usman, it was Leon Edwards. For Gamrot, Rio became that moment. The fight exposed cracks. Technical, physical, psychological. But it also forged something rare. Humility. He returned to Florida determined not to be defined by that single night. Coaches restructured his training cycles. No more short-notice gambles. Nutritionists revamped his diet, promising safer, slower cuts. Sparring partners rotated weekly to simulate different styles. Muay Thai pressure like Oliveira, wrestling scrambles like Tsarukyan, switch-hitting strikers like Turner. Gamrot also began speaking more about the mental side. In a Polish interview, he admitted, "The weight cut broke me more than the fight." He described fainting in saunas, waking up dizzy, and stepping into the cage feeling like a ghost. It wasn't weakness, it was honesty. Fans appreciated the transparency. Fighters did too. The UFC, noticing his professionalism, didn't hold the loss against him. He remained ranked, eligible for top 10 opponents. His coaches, meanwhile, reframed the narrative inside the gym. That fight didn't break him, they said. It built him. And in the quiet grind of recovery, Gamrot started to look sharper than ever. The Rio loss hadn't destroyed his career. It had reset it. The fire that burns hottest often comes from the embers of failure. Clips emerged from ATT showing Gamrot sparring again. Lighter, faster, looser. looser. The smile had returned. He posted, "Every setback is a setup." Fans rallied. He'd gone from being mocked online to becoming a symbol of perseverance. But beyond motivation quotes, there was strategy. Gamrot began focusing on one key change: always staying ready. He built a lifestyle around perpetual preparedness, maintaining weight year-round, keeping cardio high, and sparring weekly even off-camp. No more 2-week miracles, his coach laughed in an interview. Next time he fights a legend, he'll be ready for him, not just the opportunity. The UFC respected that mindset. Rumors began circulating that he'd face another ranked contender later in 2025, a fight to reassert his place among the elite. And this time, he would come in with a full camp, proper nutrition, and zero excuses. As for the Oliveira fight, Gamrot doesn't run from it. He calls it a lesson. If you want to fight the best, he says, you must be at your best. That night, I wasn't, but I showed up. And showing up is the beginning of everything. His loss, once a source of ridicule, became part of a bigger narrative about courage, about honesty, about how thin the line is between a hero and a scapegoat. Because in this sport, wins build fame, but losses build character. And Mateusz Gamrot, win or lose, proved he has plenty of that. When you step into the cage on 2 weeks' notice against a legend and still have the world talking about you, you haven't fallen. You've arrived.